What I find is I use the energy of the astrology to kind of direct or guide what all my magical work is going to be about. So it doesn't really change it, but it really deepens it.
That was the voice of Kimberly, a dear friend of ours, who a woman that we worship with in circle, and we've done a number of different things, and we've known for years and love dearly.
Love dearly, absolutely. Stay tuned and hear her describe all of the facets in her spiritual and professional practice, which include, here I go, Pagan, Witch,
Guardian,
Dianic Feminist.
Yes.
Of amazingness.
And
what else?
Astrology.
Oh, and astrology. So this woman is so multifaceted in a way that I continually find myself being blown away by. So stay tuned to hear how she incorporates that into her professional as well as spiritual life.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit Podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Before we move into our interview with Kimberly and Astrology, we thought it'd be great if we decided to revisit our resolutions. It's been 6 months since our episode on New Year's resolutions.
I think it was called Dreams, Desires, and Goals, and it was episode
8.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so we thought it'd be great to just kind of revisit that. And so we're going to have a little bit of a chance to kind of think about what we said then and what we're doing now. And here we are from episode 8.
I have a resolution. My resolution is time is magical.
Oh, I love that.
That's my intent.
Can I have some of that too?
I'll share it. It's for all of you.
Oh my gosh, because that's one of my things is just, and just recognizing that time is just energy, and that as I become more adept with myself as energy, I can become more adept with myself with time, and recognizing that interaction can be so wonderful.
I think that COVID has really shown me the magic of time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that I think a lot of people, I know that it is traumatic. It is traumatic for everyone and hard for everyone. And I think that there was some dismissal of what happened this year in that, well, we were all locked in our rooms. So therefore it didn't matter. And what I was thinking is, it does matter, and what we choose to do with our time is really important. And I understand that there's other things going on, if we lost our jobs, or if we were sick, like there's differences. But in that moment, whenever I do have agency over myself, wielding time as a magical practice, I think as a magical tool, is something that I want to look at.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like that.
Where do I put my energy? Where am I putting? Because time is energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And energy is magical. So where do I put my time? And just to go back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, I love social media. I'm just going to say it. I love social media. I'm an extrovert. So I love getting to know what people that I care about that I don't live near are doing, and their kids, and my cousins that I care deeply about that I only see maybe once a year, like seeing what they do on the weekends. Like, I love social media, and it's appropriate sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So like, time is magical. So how much time do I want to put into the magical connection of me with my cousins that live all over versus other things?
Right.
These are all the things that are percolating in this little witchy brain of mine.
I'm making a resolution that I'm going to do my best to make our world kinder, more empathetic, and more loving. And so whatever I need to do, whatever it takes for me to do that, so that I can inject that energy into the world to help the the world move towards what I think is its goal, which is to be this wonderful Garden of Eden for all of us. But we've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of rows to hoe to make this garden grow. Whoa, I made a poem.
Oh, you did. We're so magical.
I know. So back in January, those were our resolutions, and they were exciting, and it was actually exciting for me to get a chance to hear them again, in preparation for our check-in today. What about with you hearing your voice saying those things?
So I am an achiever in some ways. And I am competitive, but I really am only competitive with myself. So I don't oftentimes label myself as competitive because people think it means it's competitive with others. So I actually felt some anxiousness around going back because I was worried that I would be disappointed in myself. Excited, but anxious. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I have to say I was nervous too, because at one point I'd actually forgotten what I said my resolution was. Because about March I committed to something, or May maybe I committed to something else, but it turns out it was actually just an extension of yay. So shall I just go ahead and say it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just heard that little clip, and what I decided that the best way for me to move forward was to really commit to living love. And every time I thought about it, which probably wouldn't be as much as I should throughout the day, right? I would say, what would I do if I were a super, super loving, ascended being, and make that choice? I didn't remember to do that every single moment of every single day, obviously. And I often didn't remember to do it as much as I'd hoped I'd at least have that, like maybe 5-10 times throughout the day, I'd be at a juncture and I could say that. And sometimes I remembered and sometimes I didn't. And that's okay. But I've been journaling around it. I've actually, and this has been pretty cool, I've been journaling with my left hand.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because that taps into a different part of the brain, and it's supposed to kind of fry the barriers between your left and right brain. So I've been doing that, and I don't know if I've been successful, but at least I've been thinking about it a lot more, and I've been doing more in terms of what does it mean to be loved, to feel loved, to be loving.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Also, I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that was a thing.
What was
that
the thing?
happened to you, or that you decided?
Well, I didn't. Well, it wasn't a very public. Having committed once, I'm not gonna like. So I like to underpromise and overdeliver. So, but what was funny was at the time I made this commitment, I was thinking, I can't remember what I said I was going to do in January, but this is what I'm going to do now, and it turns out, going back and listening, it was totally in line with that. But I have been kind of working on this subconsciously because that was my next step. Isn't that?
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so magical.
Yeah. And what's so amazing is that I just totally forgot. I mean, which shows how much thought I'd been doing about my resolution, but, or at least conscious thought, right?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah,
I wonder if it's a subconscious blossoming evolution.
Well, apparently it is.
Yes.
So who knew? I just thought I was forging new territory, and I was just actually taking the next step in that journey that I had set myself on, 6 months ago.
What a wonderful evolution of the resolution or intention process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and what that whole idea that even when I am not consciously doing it, which I thought had to be not shoveling. Okay, I'm gonna take this heavy load and I'm going to do this. But one of the goals in so much of human potential is to be able to do something gracefully and effortlessly, right? And so this was one of those things where I thought, oh, I'm doing something new, but I was really just taking the next step.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. So
mine, I did enjoy listening to it
Mm-hmm.
once I actually did it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I am, so my main intention, as the listeners just heard, was time is magical. And one application of that is a daily tarot practice. So here's an interesting evolution of that. I did really, really well with my daily tarot practice. I have a journal, and I would read a card before and do some study on the card. So it was a combination of study and application. And then normally I would go to work, and then I would do my day, and then I would come home, and before bed I would do like a reflection on that card's presence and application in my day. So that was really great. I'm really proud of the dedicated practice, the ritual that became in my life, and a way of manifesting time as magical. Here's where the learning comes in. So then summer comes, which is this beautiful time for me. And normally I travel abroad. I might spend I might spend 2.5 months traveling around Vietnam and Hong Kong and China and Taiwan, or I might go to some like a camp with you or another camp that I run. I might, normally I have all these big adventures, but or spending a month in San Diego studying at a circus center. Well, this summer those things didn't happen for a number of reasons, and so I ended up being home a lot. I took a few small trips, one of which was very witchy, to Colorado, which was wonderful. Mm-hmm. But that yielded a different experience to me, where I had time available to me in a different way, and I found myself resistant to doing the things that I had said that I was going to do. One of those manifested with tarot, and then the other one, which was really weird, this cycling class that I had signed up for the cycling class because I do a lot of things that are not cardio intensive. So I was like, cycling will be good. And I found myself resistant to it. And so then which is weird for me because I do really well with
structure.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Saying something is going to has happened. And then I'm really good with follow through, which makes me a really good student in a lot of ways. But then I looked into why am I resistant to this? And what I realized was that I wanted my time to be magical in a different way. I wanted my time to be magical in a very decadent way. Way of stillness, and a way that reminds me of you describing how it felt for you during the earlier parts of the pandemic, sitting on your back porch,
right,
listening to the birds. And that it wasn't a waste of time. It was just a use of my time when it was done intentionally. Taking an hour to make and drink my tea in silence in the morning, which normally I make and drink my tea as I drive somewhere.
The holy sacred commute.
Yes. While I'm balancing.
Blessing all the other traffic, all the other drivers.
I'm balancing my breakfast sandwich in my lap, drinking my tea, listening to NPR, and driving to work. That's the holy sacred commute.
Gotcha.
So I have done some cycling, and I have done a good amount of tarot. Now, not daily like I was. And I have worked in my tarot book of shadows. And I've done a lot of other things that I feel like are very magical, but it hasn't looked the way that I thought that it would. And I think that's my biggest takeaway about time being magical, and time is energy, and energy is magic, and that it reminds me of our conversations that we've had on some of our interviews about not changing what we do necessarily, but changing the intention, whether it be with sweeping or a cup of tea. And so that's been really eye-opening for me. And I feel really good about it.
I can imagine, it's, to me, what I'm hearing is, when you needed a lot of, okay, at 10 o'clock I'm doing this, at 11:20 I'm doing this, during the school year, you were really super good with that. And a part of this focus on yourself and it being intentional about your time might just be not having any of that. Just kind of, oh wow, an hour just went by. What was I doing? Oh, nothing. Or not nothing, but what you were doing was being so totally present that you were not doing other things, right?
Yeah. And it's been lovely. I painted my living room, which is quite complex because my living room has vaulted ceilings and a lot of openings.
Yes.
So it's not a very simple paint job. And I do it myself. And it's been interesting really enjoying the process of transformation and intentional energetic transformation through changing the color of my wall. And that being a practice of my time being magical. It wasn't a laborious task that I had to do. It was a magical transformation that I was choosing to do.
Wow.
To adjust and alter the energy of that space.
that is so, it's so cool to hear that. So do you mind sharing what color did you choose?
So actually I chose to change it to white.
Oh my gosh.
And here's why. Like, my house has been very dark. Like, when I originally painted it in 2006 when I bought it, I wanted it to feel cave-like or spa-like in that womby, closed in.
Right.
And my energy has changed a lot since 2006.
Yeah.
And now and one of the reasons I bought the house was windows and trees, mature trees. Now I want it to be light and open, and it really is those things, but the color was making it not that way. And so I really wanted to change it to this brighter white color.
Right. Oh, wow. And I love hearing you talk about that, the intentionality of the actual painting and participating in the transformation of a part of your house, which is also, an outer reflection of you, right? So the transformation of yourself.
I think you'd be really proud of me. I put essential oils in my paint.
I am proud of you. Yay. Look at you. And it also helps with the
fumes.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yay.
And thank you to our listeners for holding space for us to reflect on our New Year's resolutions back in January, but also halfway through the year now.
Right. And if you don't remember some of the things we're referring to, because it wasn't in the clip that we just played, it was episode 8. And if you want to go back and listen to that, it was fun for us to get a chance to do that. And if you have some free time, go for it.
Yeah, join us there.
Yes. So welcome. I am so excited because we have a dear friend who is also a brilliant practitioner of many different things that we'll hear about in a moment, Kimberly, who is going to tell us a little bit about her journey. Welcome, Kimberly.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So, how would you identify yourself and your practice?
That is a great question, and I've been journaling for days because you told me that would be a question. I've been like, how would I answer that? So I think the general statement is easy for me. I'm a pagan. That kind of is the umbrella that covers all the things that I do. But underneath that, there's a lot. And for a long time, I was hesitant to claim too many words because I remember when I first claimed the word witch and how exciting that was. And then I remember 3 years later feeling like I had boxed myself in and questioning if I really was a witch and what was the definition. And I realized how easy it is, especially for me, for words that are descriptive to become titles, to become labels. I don't like that kind of conditioning. So for a long time, I was resistant to using any kind of descriptive other than pagan. But now I've kind of taken a different approach, and I'm like, well, why don't I just lay on as many as I can find? Right? If I have a lot, then I'm not being boxed in. If anything, I'm breaking out of the box constantly.
Right, yeah.
So I'm pagan, and underneath that, I am a witch. Sometimes solitary, sometimes kitchen, sometimes hedge, always elemental, sometimes ritualist. I am a guardian, and for people who don't know what a guardian is, it's a term that was more or less created by Reformed Congregation of the Goddess International. That's a mouthful, up in Madison. And it's basically the other half of a priestess. So whatever you think of a priestess is, the other half of that work. I mean, I could go down a little rabbit hole about what it is, but that's kind of it. And then I'm a Dianic feminist, and that's a word that I'm still getting used to using. That's all. That a lot of emotion and resistance and years of like coming to claim that word kind of there. But I feel that it is who I am personally and professionally. So I claim that. I'm here to serve the goddess, and I'm here to do work on behalf of women. And there. And I'm a healer. And underneath that, healing is everything from shamanic techniques I've learned to astrology to a lot of other things. Yeah, so there you go. Those are my 5 descriptives. I'm a pagan, witch, guardian, Dianic feminist, healer.
Wow.
That's me.
Okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
Excellent. All in one little package.
And I think it's important, that we take time to think about the words, because words have power. Going way back to ancient magic, it was all about the power in the word. I mean, the sound that the word makes, the ideas that a word brings up. Every year I dedicate to a new word of an energy I want to bring into my life. So why would I not take the same kind of intentionality about how would I describe myself kind of words?
Right. That's amazing. And I find it so interesting, and it's just so you that with these questions that we're like thinking, okay, we're going to interview her. She's like you're making them these like journaling, working on your identity and self-image, et cetera, et cetera.
I love to journal. Give me a good journal prompt and I will go. So, I mean, I was like, thank you for all these great journal prompts. Let me take advantage of them.
Yay. Well, good. I'm glad.
How and when did you know you were let me see if I can get this right. Pagan? Shaman, healer, witch, Dianic feminist, Guardian.
Ah, there you go.
I love all of those things so much.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
I really do too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the big question, I think the biggest question is like, when did I know I was a witch, right? In all of that. Because that kind of came first, I think. And it's just kind of hysterical. It was in the 90s, late 90s. I was working as a manager in an import store. I was kind of in between. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was in that soul searching. The first round didn't work out. Let me revisit and think it through. So I was working for a year as a manager at an import store, having lots of fun, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And one day, 3 of my friends who also worked at the mall that my store was at, 3 of them all come out of the broom closet on the same day. And these 3 don't know each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
they were from
Okay.
different, because I like to talk to everybody. So I had, made friends here and there, wherever. So, well, part of me was very curious. I was already pretty metaphysical. I was very open. I'd heard about Wicca. I just didn't know anyone who was a witch or a Wiccan or anything of that nature. That was back when we didn't have as many descriptives. And so it was pretty much Wicca then. But I'd heard of it and I was curious and I was already into a lot of type of metaphysics. So I didn't want to be that ignorant person who's like, well, that's nice. I thought, no, I want to know what this means and we're friends and I want to be able to, support you and understand. And there was a part of me that even back then I believed in signs. So I'm like, okay, 3 people one day. I wonder if this is a sign. I should find out what this is. So I said, how do I learn about this? And between the 3 of them, I had 4 books recommended. Scott Cunningham, of course, right?
Yes,
the classics.
Yeah, the classic.
Scott Cunningham's Solitary Practitioner, Raymond Buckland's Big Blue Book with the
Yes.
scary pentagram on it,
Yes.
the complete book of witchcraft. Campanelli's Wheel of the Year,
Hmm.
which actually just touched my heart so deeply.
the elementals were like,
Yeah. And then, of course, Spiral Dance.
Yes.
So I read Campanelli's and Scott Cunningham's first, and at the end of the first page of each book, I was thinking, somebody's been spying on me? I'm writing about what I do, and by the end of those 2 books, I realized joyously, hey, there's a word for what I believe. Because up to that point, people were like, what are you? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. Spiritualist? But that kind of gave them the idea that I was doing mediumship work or something. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, the temple is my trees. And people would be like, what does that mean? They want a name. They want a box
A
for
category.
you. A category. So suddenly I'm like, I have a category because I was already doing all this. Oh,
Right.
I mean, not everything. Obviously,
Right.
I didn't know everything, but a lot of it was innate. I was a big time into Shakti Gawaine's creative visualization
Yes.
books at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were like my number one go-to of how I was surviving the challenges of my life then. And I had already transformed all of her exercises into candle magic without realizing that's what I was doing. It just seemed natural. And that was the thing. I used to go, I'm from New England originally, from Rhode Island, and most of the summers we would go to all the living history and the reenactors. And I was like, hey, I want to pump the thing and make homemade butter and churn. Hey, I want to figure out how they do this. And you start talking to them and they tell you about the traditions of hanging the ladder in the corner, which we now call the witch's ladder,
right,
but the ladder string and the traditions of things for good luck and to keep away the bad weather. And I was kind of really into all that. My family would be like, whoa, where did you get all these traditions from? I'm like, they're New England traditions. Yeah, but we don't do it. Well, I picked it up and we didn't have any, so I went and found some. I liked it. So it just seemed like a fit. So I've been a witch since the 90s. Everything else kind of came later. Paganism, I think I adopted when we started to have so many different types of witches and witchcraft and Wicca. And when I really decided that I'm not Wiccan, I'm not in that kind of mindset about everything being so much about polarity. And I wanted to differentiate, like, I'm a witch, I'm not a Wiccan. And I think both are beautiful, but they're different. And to the rest of the world, they don't know. Like, it all seems the same. And something happened with a lot of people I was around. And how do I describe this? It was like if you said you were Wiccan, they had watched enough episodes of Charmed or something else to have heard the word, and it was like, it was okay. It had been normalized, right?
Gotcha.
The word Wiccan's been normalized, and so if you say that, people don't know what it is, but they know they've heard it, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, I'm a witch, they're like, whoa, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like a lot of people were already reclaiming the word witch back from mainstream stereotype patriarchal definitions.
Yeah.
I thought, it's time to reclaim pagan.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point I had started hanging out with a lot of women only spiritual groups that were working with the goddess and her children, and I was starting to see that was a path opening up for me, that I might be going in a kind of Dianic venue. And so pagan just felt like, okay, and it felt like a good umbrella. I didn't like that people thought they know nothing about this, but they think they know exactly who and what I am. And that concept of being labeled has always been a button for me, whether others do it or I do it. So it's like, okay, pagan's going to get me out of that box and I can be all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the others are probably more recent, as I've really been thinking about my craft and what I do and the ways I approach it, all the others have kind of just fallen into place.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like certain things, as you grew and developed, that certain things just resonated for you, and you began to you just became open to a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think really when I stopped trying to define who I am, what I am, and what that means, and what is the quote unquote right way,
I'm twinkling over here.
Yes. And all of a sudden it was like, well, now I have permission to just be who I am, and suddenly come up with that's how I would describe this. As opposed to searching for it, I allowed it to just emerge, and that felt much more natural.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, after all of that, I mean, so that's a huge part of what I sense is it would be considered you. But then there's this whole thing with astrology. How did you get involved with that?
I'm so excited. I have never actually had a conversation that I can recall where I was talking about being a witchy astrologer simultaneously. It's either I'm an astrologer who happens to be a witch, but let's talk astrology. Or it's, hey, I'm a witch who's an astrologer, but let's talk witchy stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, it's known, but it's not really, they're not, I'm not discussing them as an integrated thing with others, even though that's my life, right? So this is new and exciting.
Yay!
I love it. Thank you.
That blows my mind.
How so?
It blows my mind that that's true for you, because I guess I think I'm lucky and I get to see the integration. I think I'm lucky. I think I get to see the integration. I don't want to speak for you. Mm-hmm. So it's as someone who doesn't see you in that bit, I don't know, I'm just going to call it your business side. I don't know. I didn't realize that was true for you.
It is. Like, expectations have been probably the one thing I've learned the most from, is overcoming both my own expectations for myself, but other people's expectations of, what an astrologer is. It's pretty interesting. You open up the dictionary and you have a picture of somebody from ancient Greece. Like, there is no one size fits all. This is what an astrologer is. So, and even within astrology, there's so many like divisions and subtypes. It's really hard to figure out for yourself, like, what is it for me? And what I find is that people who are witchy or want an esoteric experience are very disappointed that I don't wear a big black hat. I don't use oracle cards. That there's not a meditation at the end. It's like, how can you not be doing that? I'm like, because I'm doing astrology. I'm not a one size fits all. Yeah. And yet, if you're dealing with somebody who's maybe more mainstream, or I'm dealing with a lot of my fellow astrologers are not witchy at all. They're pretty much Christian. They're pretty much more or less mainstream.
What?
Yeah. I'm the exception.
What?
And to me, it's such a magical science. It's so it just seems like it. Yeah.
It is, and that's probably a long soapbox, so I'll spare you that. But what I have found is that when I first started considering myself a professional astrologer, because so you asked, how did I get into astrology? So let's back up, and we'll come to these expectations that dumbfounded me as well. So my first exposure was my grandmother. My grandma was an astrologer. And she was a rockin' astrologer. She was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just gloat on my grandma for a minute.
Yeah, please.
So my grandmother, somewhere I believe in her 40s, she had a disability, prevented her from going to work. And after a year of cleaning the house and trying to knit and doing everything else domestic that did not fit, she was not a domestic diva. She decided, I'm just always been curious, and I'm going to go take a class at the community ed thing. And met some people and took more classes and kept going. And so she studied astrology back when we didn't have computers. So astrology, for those who don't know, is very mathematical. In order to create somebody's birth chart, you have to be able to do a whole lot of numbers and angles and geometry. And thank you that we have computers. I didn't have to learn all that for a very long time. But like in the back in the day, that's where you started. Because you had to create a chart before you could learn how to interpret it. So, I would watch her for hours, sit there. She would record her classes, come home, and listen to the tape on a cassette, nonetheless. Listen to the tape and be handwriting her notes down. So I had this sense that, astrology was discipline. Watching her do that. And I was a young kid, so it's like, wow, it's beautiful and it's magical, but it's also discipline. And I would overhear her, teaching classes. As I grew, she would read for me twice a year. So I had the advantage of actually knowing what a reading could provide. I'd overhear her reading for some of the family members. So I had a sense of it, but she wouldn't teach me. I think partly because I was young and she felt like, when you're older, you'll be able to contribute the discipline it takes. But I think part of it was she was trying to protect me because it wasn't accepted. I mean, there was a lot of jeering and a lot of the family had hissy fits and there was a lot of negotiating. You can do this, but you can't ever charge because then you're one of those like 800 psychic, charlatan, all these kind of conversations that had to be negotiated. So I think she was trying to protect me by keeping some distance until I was older, but I was fascinated. And I learned enough to be able to understand some bits and pieces and get by, and that was enough for me for a really long time because I had an astrologer in the family. Why would I go learn it?
Yeah, exactly.
But as an adult, after she transitioned over, I found myself like, okay, in addition to not having my grandma, I don't have an astrologer, and this is like a vital guiding tool. I need this in my life. So I started looking for one, and I was very disappointed with how people were interpreting my chart. I was getting a lot of pop sun sign astrology. Like 1 + 1 = 2, we're done. Not in depth, and my chart's a little not the norm. I'll just leave it there. So you have to actually like use some brain cells to kind of figure out how this goes together. If you start taking just a general approach, you're gonna be like, oh well, you're just like really fussy and you don't eat food and you're just super critical. And I mean, can be critical, but I'm more self-critical. I'm not really fussy. I didn't become vegetarian until I was like in my 30s, so. No, things that just didn't apply. And I was so dissatisfied because I'd had the expert who also knew me because we were family. And now I'm getting people who are strangers and they're telling me stuff that's just bunk. So fast forward, early 2000s, like 2002-ish, I'm in San Antonio. I'd moved here. My life was all work and no play. I had moved here pretty fresh, so I didn't have very many friends yet. And I thought, I'm going to take an astrology class. The worst that could happen is maybe I'll make a friend or two who share my interests. The best that could happen is I might understand enough to look at my own chart. And all that happened and more. So I made some great friends.
Yeah.
I had an amazing instructor. I fell in love passionately with astrology from the very first class. Fortunately, he has a sister who is a Virgo like me with a really intense chart like mine. So he already had a kind of different perspective on how to interpret it. So I was in love. Like, thank you. And it was just, down the rabbit hole, 6 years of study with him and with others. I just loved it. I kept doing it. It was my solitude from a really hectic workload in the corporate world. I was working as a director in financial development. So it was like, I need a perspective change here each week. And at some point, I think it was 2008, I went to a conference. And it feels very witchy in hindsight because there was this conference that happens once every 4 or 5 years where all these astrology groups, professional groups all get together and they do a collective thing instead of an individual thing. It's big. Yeah, it's really big. They get about 800 people from across the country, a few international. It's this like theme for astrologers. It's you gotta go. It's called the UAC, United Astrology Conference. And in 2008, they were having one in Colorado. And I get an email saying the scholarship that you applied for, you're getting. Except I never applied for a scholarship. I was like, Grandma, are you guiding me from beyond? Okay. So I thought, I wasn't really sure I could go, but I just kind of said, well, okay, what does this mean? So they put me as a volunteer at the hospitality table, which was right across, and they gave me a room share, and my mother gave me like her frequent flyer miles. So for practically nothing, I got to go for this long weekend, and I'm right by the elevator, and all the presenters are coming off. They walk right up to me. Where's this? Where's that? And I'm seeing these faces. It was like, this was my first fangirl moment.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I have your book. Oh my God. Wow, you look so much older than your picture. Oh my God, you're just amazing. You're here too. It was this, suddenly it became reality. I wasn't in a room of 6 people studying astrology. I was in a place that had over 500, 800 people who, many of whom, this is their profession and their livelihood. What? You can actually make money. You can be an astrologer. Like, that was the wake up for me.
Job, yeah.
This can be a job, an occupation, and a passion.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So I came back from that after a lot of coaching from people I met there, and decided I am a professional astrologer. I've been studying for 6-7 years. I know enough to know something, and so I started doing it part-time. Mm-hmm. And like from there, it's just kind of grown very gradually, very slowly into, a full-time livelihood. Yeah. But the expectations just blow me, because within the astrology world, there are people who say, this is the right way to do it. No, this is the right way to do it. No, we don't do those old things anymore. We do these modern things. No, well, the way they do it in India is right. No, the way they do it in India is wrong. I mean, it just amazes me that there is not an acceptance of diversity. There's a lot of fighting for that one thing. So for a long time, I was very hesitant to be like, hey, fellow peer astrologers, I'm also a witch. And I'm a pagan witch, Dianic feminist. Fortunately, as more time has gone by, I'm finding more people are entering, more younger people are entering, more people with maybe a broader mindset. Maybe it's more millennials. Maybe it's just the time of the age of now that people are more open. Because now when I go to conferences, I find more like-minded people. I usually am looking for I always go with henna on my arm as a giveaway that,
it's a marker.
It's a marker. I'm kind of cool and different and out of the box. And then I look for somebody who, has a tarot deck with them or the cool witchy skirt. And, you do that eye contact and now we can have conversations. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of astrologers who are very openly witchy and blending, right? They're an astrologer plus other things. I just choose to love astrology so much. It's my passion, so I just can't really put it aside to bring other things to the table.
One of the things you've done, my gosh, you've done numbers of readings and of various sorts. And one of the things that so impresses me about working with you is, and I know you probably don't want to hear me say it this way, but it's very therapeutic for me because, this idea that you not only give me insight, but you tell me ways that I can use that insight, and I can actually use it, like to journal, to grow, to and apply it in various places in my life. And so it's not just these are the stars. It's not like opening the newspaper and reading your horoscope or whatever. And so is that how prevalent is that in the field, or is this kind of like your little niche, or is that a reflection of your witchiness or your intuitiveness, or what?
I think I approach it because of my witchiness, mm-hmm. but it is a big topic. There are a lot of traditions that are much more predictive oriented, and I decided kind of early on I'm not. It's helpful to know that we're going to hit a time period of tension, and maybe that tension's at work,
helpful.
And that tension at work might be involving like female supervisors. Like, I'm just kind of grabbing something at random. Mm-hmm. That can be really useful to know. I'm not interested in diving deeper to be like, okay, on such and such day, you're going to have an argument with person so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And there are astrologers who are really good at getting that detail. They can drill down. Mm-hmm. That's just not my approach. For me, it's about being therapeutic. It's about healing. For me, when I did astrology, when I was learning it, we learned off our own charts first, and I always said it was better than therapy. I learned so much, and when I'm working with clients or clients are asking me like, okay, so if I'm going to do a reading with you, what's it about? I usually tell them there's 3 things I focus on. Let's uncover how you've been conditioned by family, by life, by society. Let's rediscover your authentic self. And many of us have done work and are already in touch with parts of our authentic self, but to me, that's like peeling an onion. It's a never-ending layer upon layer. So let's rediscover more of our authentic self. And then the third thing is let's figure out how we can realign with him, it. Let's realign with our authentic self. And to me, that's about doing the healing work, facing shadow, thinking about the patterns. And is this the first time that this has happened? Or is it, no, I can see the pattern of this has happened with every mother figure or father figure or authority figure. I mean, that's where, to me, it gets juicy and it gets exciting and it's meaty and it can be life-changing.
Right. I've cleared them off, but I had little Post-its all over my computer. You've seen it.
She did have Post-its everywhere.
Where it's like, I think it was either May or June, you said, that's going to be your hermit month. And it was...
I asked her about it. I was like, what's with the sticky note?
Because I think you told me this like 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and I didn't want to miss it, so I left that Post-it on there until that month came. Yeah.
So why does your computer say hermit?
That is great.
Yeah.
And, that's also the beauty, because if we're working with the cycles as opposed to against them, because, okay, well, right now I've decided I'm going to start this new project, it's great to be able to look at a chart and be like, this is a good time to start things. This is a good time to recharge. This is a time for some reflection. If we're working with the cycles, it's the cycles of the universe, but it's the cycles of our soul as well. I mean, the main tenet of astrology goes way back to, ancient Greco-Roman times, and it's as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. That's what it's about. So if we can use that as a tool to see this is a cycle I'm entering into and work with it, instead of against it, we're going to get so much more.
Yes.
As someone who has shared ritual space with you for a long, long time, it's so interesting to hear you saying these things, because I see it prevalent in your rituals.
Aww.
I guess I just never made that connection, and I don't know hardly anything about astrology, so it's really cool to see what's the burning in the center of this passion. Wow.
Yeah, it can be really fun when you're on a ritual team with somebody and you looked at the chart for the time of the ritual before the planning meeting meets, and somebody's like there was one time, and what I saw was all these signatures in the chart of fire and passion and energy and release and let it go, and somebody's like, okay, well, we're going to start off with a nice slow centering, and I'm like, I think we need to do something to let people explode and then they can center. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. And what are you going to say to them? Well, I've looked at the chart and the chart says
the stars have guided me to tell you.
It's really hard sometimes to hold that back, but I really think this would be useful.
So can you tell us more about how you see your witchiness, Dianic,
healer, guardian,
the whole thing?
Yes,
the whole pagan thing.
Because I assumed they were one and the same, but it sounds like there is some layering there.
Layering is a good word. I like that. I think most of my life I've been a person who likes to compartmentalize. In the last maybe 15 years, I've had a real focus on integration, on bringing those parts together, on being me all the time. It is so easy not to be fake, but just to say, oh, you like gardening, I'll bring that part of me forward. I have so many questions. I don't do it and I want to know more. Oh, you're into sports. Well, I'll bring back the time I climbed Mount Washington. And well, you do these things where do we have some commonality? But I often forget to just bring the other parts forward.
Wow.
So it's not unusual. When we were gathering, you're like, and what is your name? Because, well, in pagan circles, I have one name, and then with close friends, I have a nickname, and then in the professional world, I'm Kimberly. It's oh yeah, I kind of sometimes forget to bring those other parts forward. So I'm constantly reminding and learning how to integrate. So I think initially they were layers. I saw them as distinct layers. And what I'm realizing is 2020 for me was so useful. I'm not going to talk about all the ways that it was horrific, because it was horrific for everybody in many different ways. But I also have to acknowledge that there was one wonderful thing that happened. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to really get creative about how was I going to make some revenue, because, people's ability to access discretionary disposable income that they're going to spend on astrology reading kind of shifted. So I had to get more creative about my approach, about what I'm going to do, really start thinking about maybe doing a marketing plan that is rolling out this year. And what I came to realize was I'm just showing people the astrologer side. And all the other stuff's happening in my mind, but I'm not bringing that forward. So it's kind of like I'm in this period now of, okay, they really can all be one thing. And how do I bring that forward, and how do I make that happen? So I've been doing some tentative steps, like there's this one private group that asked me to do some classes, and I decided, all right, well, instead of teaching the astrology point of view that the moon has 8 phases, what if I incorporate working with goddesses with each of those phases? Oh, and let's really get out there. How about if we talk about during the full moon, we talk about sun goddesses, because the full moon reflects the sun. That's what makes it a full moon. Yeah. So let's bring that in. So it's like, oh, here's my astrology brain and here's my witchy brain. And for the first time, they're not separate compartments. Even though they weren't totally separate, it was sort of like one kind of could kibitz, but had to stay back. And now it's like they're equal players. And I'm really liking where that's leading and what that's bringing up. And I feel more creative about the astrology. I started doing journeys of discovery, where instead of having one session, people actually get a 3-pack, but on one topic. So we can do deep dives. We start off with here's the general patterns we see in your birth chart, and then the next time and maybe in that discussion, something popped as like a primary theme. Maybe something popped about early childhood or about a job or something. Now we're going to go explore that a little deeper, and then we go deeper, and that was amazing. I started that the middle of last year, and that has just been the feedback I've gotten from that has been really amazing. And for me, it's wonderful because I'm able to bring more to the table. And so I think in the future, that's where it's headed, is bringing more of the feminist. I finally started claiming the word feminist even on my Facebook page, and I started playing with Instagram now. And so, doing photos, doing memes where it's like, okay, this has to be out there at least once a month. This has to be. I really love Instagram for integrating. I resisted Instagram for the longest time. I know you kept telling me, get on Instagram. It's like really easy. And I'm like, yeah, when I have time. I've been like social media resistant. Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. Because you can literally look at a month and be like, there's the part of me that's this. There's the part of me that's that.
Oh, right.
And it's like, oh, there's this whole picture with all these different layers. I love it. And I feel like it also helps without going into a lot of talking. It helps people that are interested in getting a reading with me to get a bigger picture of, okay, here's all the different sides. This is what's coming forward.
They get the image. There's more imagery, and probably you bring in senses just with the colors, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Every time you post something on Instagram, I try to respond with, more content, please.
More.
Yeah, that's great.
I love your responses. They're always great.
I can't like it enough. I can't heart it enough.
So I'm really excited. Some of this, the pulling the layers together was, all right, well, so I'm a pagan and I'm a Dianic feminist. So one of the issues I have personally is how so many of the astrology books and things we learn from use really patriarchal language.
Oh, gosh.
Right? I understand where it comes from, and I understand the context, but I still have issues with, there's only 2 planets named she, and that were named after, a feminine energy. I still have an issue with the idea that, masculine is referred to as positive and feminine is referred to as negative. Yeah, I understand that's about a polarity charge, but we now live in today. I don't live in, 1000 AD Greece. I live today. So the words have meaning and connotations today. And all of the gender bias in astrology is like a pet peeve of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've started doing is I'm currently doing some photo shoots and working on some blogs for a series that's going to come out later in the fall on the planets, a feminist perspective.
Excellent.
And so the first one we did, I got to dress up like Mars. And it's like me and a flaming sword. And it's like, yeah, Mars is a woman. See this? Mars is in my mind, my Mars in my chart. Now, Mars could be something different in your chart or somebody else's chart. We all have different ideas about gender, about identity. In my chart, my Mars is a woman. Stop calling it he. That's not who my Mars is. So this whole thing is about like doing all the planets as, those planets as a deity, as something female, as me.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So I can just feel more creative because the astrology isn't just about me interpreting. This is what astrology means. Let me give it to you in lingo you can understand and be that bridge. It's more like, okay, this is my take. I've finally given myself permission to be like, you've been doing this for 25 years. I think now I can say, this is what I think this all means, and this is what my witchy self says. And so, there's a lot of air in your chart. You might want to balance that. Would you like to do some deep breath work? I can recommend somebody who does that. And it feels much more holistic, much more me, which I like.
So as we're talking a lot about how this, this resonates for where you are emotionally and spiritually, and it started as, I don't know, a hobby, and then you started doing this part-time. So, could you talk a little bit about maybe why, and then maybe the how of negotiating, taking this from just something that was a passion and then actually making it your business?
Oh,
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's important. And I think there's more and more that happening nowadays. I actually read for a lot of people who are in the process of doing that. One thing I think it's important is that I have learned in hindsight, looking back, is that whenever we're bringing something that's of our witchy self forward, whether it's tarot or some kind of divination or Reiki or some kind of healing or astrology or whatever we're bringing forward, when you decide to step into it as your business, it's a business. So there's going to be a lot of mundane, almost muggle-like hours spent on it. I mean, I can tell you how creating a website is probably my least favorite thing I have done thus far, and it feels not witchy at all. It will be when it's done. It'll have cool pictures of me that make me feel witchy, but right now, oh, please. So, you are stepping into being an entrepreneur, so it's like juggling these two things. On the one side, I am living my passion. I am doing astrology every day, not once a week, every day. It's there. It's guiding me. It's guiding my business. How cool is that? I don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, I'm not making this decision because the stars say so, because I'm the boss. So I'm making this decision because the stars say so. It's great. It's wonderful. And on the other side is there's so many hours I don't get to do the astrology and my passion that I'm having to do all the websites or the invoices or the mailing list or the fixing something because the system crashed or researching what system I need to buy, or the admin side is just humongous and endless. And even though I knew that, in my brain it was like, not I'm going to go be an entrepreneur and all that entails. It's I'm going to be an astrologer, and that means I'll have to do some entrepreneurship.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like you're going to do a whole lot of that entrepreneurship that will allow you to spend some of your time doing your passion. So that can be hard, and what I hear from a lot of people is how it's really hard when your passion becomes your job, because it's easy for it to feel like work, and now it doesn't feel like fun, and negotiating that. The other thing that's hard is I'm doing spiritual stuff every day, but I'm doing it for other people.
Oh,
and so in the mind, it's like, well, I did my spiritual stuff today, check, and what I found was I was starting to be a bit spiritually bereft, because I wasn't doing my own personal solitary work. My witchy self was like, hey, what about me? Make time for me. So that's been interesting, and I've negotiated that by bringing more of the planets into my daily life. So I get up every morning and I sing to the sun. Every night before I go to bed, I have this lovely book on devotional to the moon, and I read about that night's moon phase. In fact, I looked up today's, and I'm going to share with you.
Oh, yes, please.
Because this is Prayers to the Goddess, a moon cycle devotion, and it's by Anne Key, and she's amazing. And I recommend this to all of my astrology students. So I teach a lot of classes on astrology, and I'm like, this is one of the best ways to just get into that rhythm of that cycle. So today the moon is in the phase just before it's full, has about 3 days of being almost full. We call it a gibbous, and the affirmation or the devotional for that is being held in gentle moonlight. Your gentle light shines from above, softening the edges, blurring what I thought was fixed, relaxing what I thought was rigid, yielding what I thought was unyielding, opening what I thought was closed. Dear Goddess, envelop me in your gentle light. Sweet.
That is so. I love
So may
that.
it be.
Yeah.
So may it be. And what I'm finding is just having my planets be with me throughout the day and remembering to make time to honor them and to honor that part of myself, because they're one and the same, has helped me kind of bridge that, oh, I'm doing it all for others, not for myself, and remembering to make the time.
Can you share a little bit about your, for lack of a better term, your witchy practice and the way that you incorporate astrology into it on your day-to-day?
Yeah.
Like you just shared, like waking up and...
Oh yeah, I think when I started bringing astrology into my witchy practice, as opposed to seeing it as something other, it just shifted so much. So I work a lot with the sun in my witchy practice. I love
That's a big shock.
Shockaroo! Anybody who's done ritual with me knows, I can name 50 sun goddesses. Can we please use one of them?
I know. It wasn't an eye roll that I had, but it was just like it was more like I don't know. Like, did you not read that headline?
I think we actually did a ritual where you pretty much had like 20 or 23
Yes.
of them or something.
Yes. Yes. And they were, oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. I love the sun goddesses. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but I interrupted.
Yes.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So the sun in astrology is the self. And sun goddesses, to me, in a lot of the pagan contexts, are about your force, your strength, right? And so I start bringing them together. And so now what I have is I have come up with like sun goddesses that I work with every full moon.
Ooh,
because,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
the full moon is the moon reflecting the sun in a way that I can take it on, in a way that is gentle enough for me to receive it, right? It's that mirror that gives me that softening of that harsher energy. So I'm like, well, I like sun goddesses. Why would I force myself to do something other? Okay, so I'm going to do that. I tend to use the timing of astrology a lot for timing my magic. So if Mercury's about to go retrograde, I might do a ritual the night before Mercury goes retrograde about opening myself up to things that are good during the retrograde, like reflection. Anyone who knows me knows Mercury retrograde is all about revisit, reflect, redo, and the list goes on. But it's easy to forget that, but I have this thing I wanted to start next week. So sometimes I do a ritual just to be open and less resistant to that. So what I find is I use the energy of the astrology to kind of direct or guide what all my magical work is going to be about. So it doesn't really change it, but it really deepens it.
Okay, so how would you describe your ideal day?
Oh my gosh. My ideal day would be to rise with the sunrise, to go outside, do some sun yoga salutation, to sing to the sun, then to spend some time with my cats because they don't get nearly enough of my attention, and then to do some type of collective in person or on Zoom, or preferably in person if it's my ideal day, collective energy where we're all coming together and having a women's circle and singing to the planets. I've been starting to make like songs to the sun, songs to the moon. Those are easy for me to find in pagan chat groups, but I'm now starting to try to find songs that are like, to create my own little song list of songs that like maybe are about a theme that I know connects to this planet, so that I can start having planetary song lists. So we would sit and we would chant and drum and sing to the song, somewhere around high noon, middle of the afternoon. And then it would be to do some deep work with clients where clients I have seen repeatedly, so we've gotten deep and we know what's there, and we're doing the what's happening, what's changing, what's moving. And then late afternoon some time for reading, to read more about, now my passion is to read about the fixed stars. Because astrology focuses on the planets, which are the wandering stars. The fixed stars are the stars of the constellations, right? And, well, they've been used in astrology for eons, and so there's a lot of people now learning more, and there's some great speakers over in England talking about this, so I'm just now beginning to, that's the thing about astrology, you'll never be bored. There's always something else to learn. So now that's my thing, is I want to learn about the major fixed stars, and what does it mean when your planet is close to one of those fixed stars. So I would have time for, like, you know, continuing to be a student and continuing to learn and to do that. And then I would have time to sit outside on a blanket and stargaze. Some classes I did recently with an astrologer called Gemini Brett. He's got a lot of great videos out on YouTube for those who are interested. And he talks a lot about having a personal relationship, not seeing it as something on a piece of paper, but actually having a look at the stars and feel that connection, or creating a sundial, you know, and watching, just sitting and watching the sun, you know, move around that, and creating this relationship where it's you. And I have this one meditation that I've created for myself that I do from time to time. So that's how I'd end my perfect day, is I'm laying down and I'm what do you call it? When you send energy, I'm spinning the energy around me, and it's going from the north above my head up to the star directly above me, you know, over my solar plexus, down to the setting at the west, which is by my feet, to the nadir, which is the bottom of a chart, the bottom of a chart that is below me. And like, I am part of the cosmos, you know, because this is my cosmology. It's not just a science I believe in, although it is. It's my cosmology about how life and the world and the system works, and I'm a part of it. So I would probably end it by doing that meditation that I have, and then just stargazing to see what star appears. And I love to sit and stare at a star and just focus on it, and allow my intuition to tell me what that star wants to tell me, what information is coming. And after I'm done, then I pull out my little phone with the cool little app, and I'm like holding it up there to be like, what star are you? You know, the Starfinder apps. But I'll write it down, and the next day I'll look up that star and be like, is there, and it's amazing how often there's overlap between what your intuition is telling you. I mean, it's not exact, right? It's the same. But I tend to believe my intuition more than I believe the books these days. So, so yeah, that's how I would probably end it, and then go to bed with my moon journals, do my devotional to the moon, and go to bed with my moon journal and see what happens. That would be my ideal. Now that you've said that, I'm thinking, okay, I think I know what to do for my next vacation, like weekend spa day. I've just created the day.
It sounds so rich and juicy. I mean, that's just amazing.
My ideal day overlaps with your ideal day, and that we would get to sing together.
And then you get to go dance.
And then I would dance.
Well, I would scroll them with my books.
Yes, and hug some trees.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Was there anything that you care to share with us that we didn't ask you?
Oh my gosh. I can't think of anything. I mean, I just appreciate being able to be in space with both of you, to see you in person physically is amazing.
Yeah, we're all in the same room.
my heart is just overjoyed. But really, just to be able to say astrology is wonderful and amazing. I think the thing I would share for people who are like, oh, that's nice for her. That would be me. That would be me as the listener. That's really nice for her. Is, astrology is often intimidating and overwhelming because everyone tries to learn it with their mind, and there's not as many ways out there of connecting with it as a witch, right? We connect with things energetically, intuitively, kinesthetically. Let me feel it, so I would say, like, go out and stargaze. Start with what our witchiness knows about how to connect, and then we can open up and go learn it. Or you can take a class with me, because that's what I'm going to tell you to do for homework. It's, do that kind of thing, to have a relationship. Because then it's not quite so inaccessible, and it's something we can use in our life. That's about all. But thank you for having me. I do have one poem to share.
Okay, excellent.
I know how y'all love poetry. I love your poetry when I listen to the podcast. So this is a book called Her Words. It's an anthology of poetry all about the great goddesses. A friend gave it to me recently, and I came across this one in the back of it, and I thought, oh, that's me in astrology. Yeah. So this is Creation and Cosmology by Cosi Fabian. I am space. I am the stars. Each element present in that first iota of time is in me. All time has expanded to this moment. All creation flows in my blood. Exploding novas flash in my eyes. My breath is the rush of suns. I am space. I am the stars.
Wow.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Oh, absolutely. So my handle on Facebook and Instagram, and pretty soon I'll be on Pinterest, where I'm going to be doing a lot of the goddessy stuff. If you have a favorite feminist or female icon, let me know, because I will start looking up their charts. So the handle on all three of those is Cosmic Compass. And my website that will soon be out is astrologywithkimberly.com. So any of those will get you to me.
Yay. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing all of this information, but thank you for sharing yourself, and thank you for coming on.
Well, and thank you for having me and asking and being interested. It's been a real pleasure.
I feel really grateful to have you as a friend and someone I get to stand in circle with, and also now someone that we get to talk on the podcast together. So thank you.
Hey.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!